When it comes to the shift from fossil fuels to renewables, there is one unmistakable truth. It all comes down to price. And now, solar prices have dipped so low that it will soon be crowned king of the world's electricity markets. In fact, in its latest World Energy Outlook, the IEA said that solar is on track to set new records every year starting in 2022. And it's not just because the fossil fuel industry took a hit from the pandemic. Solar PV is now consistently cheaper than new coal or gas-powered plants in almost every country. In its new detailed analysis, the IEA now sees solar power between 20 and 50% cheaper than it originally thought. For utility-scale solar projects completed in 2020, the levelized cost of electricity was between $35 and $55 per megawatt hour in some markets. But what do we mean when we say levelized costs? That just means the average cost of electricity generation spread over the lifetime of a power plant. To compare, the average levelized cost of solar power 4 years ago was $100 per megawatt hour, according to the World Economic Forum. And over the last decade, solar prices have fallen even more dramatically to just a fraction of what they once were. The price of coal-generated power, which has held pretty much steady over the last decade, averages between $55 and $150 per megawatt hour, according to the IEA. Solar PV isn't cheap everywhere, though, but it is cheaper than fossil fuels in some places. And in some of those prime solar locations, the cost of solar power is even at or below $20 per megawatt hour, making solar PV the cheapest source of electricity in history. In some places, anyway. So where are those places? When it comes to solar prices, it's not as much about the cost of the technology or the technological advancements that determines the overall price of solar power. It's more about policies. Solar PV is the cheapest in the locations that have the most solar-friendly policies. Solar-friendly countries include China, Europe, Japan, and, perhaps surprisingly, the United States. Solar PV is also cheaper than coal power in India, a country with a strong coal industry and a booming population of 1.4 billion. With solar energy cheaper than coal-fired energy, at least in some places, it is enough to make solar PV a game-changer in the energy industry. And the cost of solar is set to drop even further. In India, for example, solar PV could fall as much as 65% over the next 20 years. Meanwhile, the cost of coal seems to be stuck in place. The falling solar prices prompted the IEA to say that in its main scenario, renewables are expected to meet 80% of all global electricity demand growth over the next decade, with hydropower remaining the largest source of renewable energy, but with solar power accounting for the biggest growth. For coal, this is bad news. India, the world's second-largest coal producer, is now expected to produce 86% less new coal power capacity through 2040 than the IEA predicted last year. For the oil and gas industries, however, the IEA isn't calling the end just yet. Solar may be crowned king, but there is no sign, the Paris-based agency says, that demand for oil and gas will rapidly decline anytime soon.